Hey, all you snare drum players out there. This is going to be a tutorial to help you with the WTAMU Bandcamp Music Year B. I think it's from 2018. But I'm going to go line for line at 45 beats per minute, and I'm going to play the line once without the rolls and once with the rolls so that you can hear the correct subdivision that you need to be playing whenever you're playing the rolls during this piece. That can be the tricky part inside of this piece. I like to play tripletized 16ths for all of the rolls inside of this piece, which means that you're sometimes coming out on the left hand and sometimes coming out on the right hand. And we all know that we lean hard towards starting on the right hand lean, unless you're lucky enough to be a left-handed person. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. This is the very first line. I'm going to turn the metronome on, and let's play it without the rolls. And I'll count us off. Set, lolly, go, lolly. Great. Great. So now let's go back and play it with the rolls. Just a little tip. I like to start the tripletized 16ths or the buzz roll and the last measure off of my left hand, so that when I end up on beat 1 of measure 5, the release of my roll, it's on the right hand. All right, let's do that with the rolls. 2, set, lolly, go, lolly. Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Also, a couple of things that I want to point out is you need to be really careful about your releases. For example, in measures 1 and 3, we have a quarter note roll tied to an eighth note release, both happening on beat 2. They are very similar, the two measures. The only difference is there's a crescendo in the first measure. I'm sure you knew this, but let's take a look at that. If we were to play the tripletized 16ths and we started off the right hand, the release is on the right hand. Or right, left, right, right. So be careful about which hand you're starting on and releasing on, because if we were to start that off the left hand, obviously the release would be on the left hand. Let's go ahead and move on though. So measure 5 is where we're going to start. We're going to play this next line, remember, without the rolls. 2, set, lolly, go, lolly. Yeah, very nice, very nice. So let's try that again, but now we're going to play it with the rolls. This is how we roll. Here we go. Set, lolly, go, lolly. Great, great. I like to point out that the rolls, the dotted quarter note tied to an eighth note, that's basically how we're going to feel a full beat, right? Because we're feeling this 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 lolly, 2 lolly. But the basic feel is in 2, right? So that would be a whole beat of roll in the way we're feeling it in 2. Whenever we have that whole beat and we started off the right hand, we're going to end the roll on the left hand. Let's take that last measure, what would be measure 8, and just do a quick excerpt. Without the roll, right, left, right, left, right, left, with the roll. My computer keeps trying to go to sleep on me. Let's try it again with the roll. Without the roll. Left. With the roll. Left. Off the right hand. Left. So make sure you spend some time with that so that you feel comfortable with it. Next line. What would be measures 9 through 12? Let's take a look at that. There's not a whole lot of rolls inside of here, but there are quite a few flams inside of here. So just make sure that your grace notes are really low and that the primary note, or what I would refer to as the big note, if we were looking at it, it is a little fuller and the grace note is lower, okay? So here we go. From measure 9, set, lolly, go, lolly. So I like to play that last measure, what would be measure 12. The flam is on the left hand. Right, left, left hand flam. And I don't think I played that without the rolls that time. That was my bad. So let's try that again without the rolls. We're going to play the tripletized 16th subdivision and what would be measure 10 on beat 2. It's going to be a right hand starting roll that releases on the right hand. I like it when that happens. Let's do measure 9, or starting from measure 9. Set, lolly, go, lolly. Very good, very good. So, since we've already played it with the roll, let's go ahead and move on. So now we're going to look at 13 through 16. Let's take a look at that. Not a whole lot of roll action, but there are some doubles in there, some little roughs inside of there. You could play these stylized or strictly in time. I'm going to demonstrate both just so you can hear the difference. That was the stylized version. Let's hear it strictly in time as if we were interpreting what would be the next 16th note as a double, because it's an 8th note with that little double grace note tied to the next beat, what would be the next 8th note, the law of 1. So let's interpret that now strictly as if it was just like what we might refer to in the drumline rudimental world as a diddle. Set, lolly, go, lolly. So, there is a very subtle difference there. Very few will appreciate it, but those who do are on a different level of playing. And so we want to be able to interpret it both ways. I feel like it's a smart approach to start with the latter of the two, the strict rhythmical interpretation like it was a diddle or something like that in the drumline world. Like if we were playing just solid 16th notes, for example, and measure 13. Here, I'll use the Met. 2. We would diddle the second 16th partial in the grouping of 6. That again. So, this is a very safe and comfortable approach, I find, for most players. It is the stylized approach that can kind of throw a wrench in the spokes of what we're trying to do. But don't be afraid to give it a shot. I find that it's more of a tripletized feel, so that if we were to interpret the first 8th note with like a little 3 over the top of it and think of it as a set of tripletized 16ths, we would play the first partial of those 3 notes and a double on the third partial. And I'll play that again. With all of the subdivision in there, I'm going to give it a shot. So yeah, it's kind of different feel, but definitely another level of playing that you could take this etude to. Let's go ahead and check out the next line. Line 17 through 19. Lots of accents and dynamic changes, but they're like the same rhythm pretty much. So just make sure you're paying attention to where the accent lies on the hand. For example, the first measure, right, right, left, right, left, right. And then the second measure, left, 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 right, left, right. And then it switches back to the first measure again, but just at a different dynamic level, right? So not too complicated. There's only 3 measures on that one line. Okay, so measure 17 through 19. Let's play it. We'll probably only play it a few times. Here we go. 1, 2, set, ollie, da, 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 da. That's it. Just piano at the beginning, mezzo forte on the third measure. Things that help me be able to execute that at the different dynamic extremes and levels is playing on the different parts of the drum head. Obviously, we get a much more fuller and throatier sound out of the center of the drum. And towards the edge, it thins out a bit, but we still have nice snare quality there. And we can use it to our advantage. I will play measure 17 and 18 closer to the edge, and I'll move closer to the middle of the drum for measure 19. Watch. 2, set, ollie, go, instantly impacts the sound, and then I don't have to make too much adjustment in my hands. So it's just really easy to be able to create that dynamic without a whole lot of change in your hands. You don't actually have to necessarily play it louder, just play it on a different spot of the drum. Let's take a look at the next 3 bars, 20 through 22. I'll go ahead and play those. No more, we've been out of roll country for a while. Let's take a look at these. Still dynamic changes, nice rhythmical action. We've got some roughs. Yeah, let's go ahead and play it. I went on and played half of the next measure. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at that. I played my roughs stylized that time. Da, 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 da. And that was personal choice. I just like to hear them that way. Let's go ahead and try it once with the strict interpretation as if we were just playing diddles, the 16th note subdivision in between those 8th notes. 2, set, lolly, go, lolly. Subtle difference, right? Subtle difference. I'm still playing the same amount of notes. I'm still playing the same dynamics. Heck, I'm even playing it off the same hands. But the rhythmical interpretation is just slightly different, and so we want to appreciate the differences. Let's go ahead and move on to the next line. Okay, we've got some rolls again, and it looks like the composer has really demanded us to be able to demonstrate our ability to play rolls at different dynamic levels. It starts out at mezzo forte, steps down to mezzo piano, piano, and pianissimo. So we want to make sure that, one, we're playing all of these rolls the same way. I like to play them all off the right hand. They're dotted quarter note rolls tied to an 8, so we know that the release is going to be off the left hand. let's go ahead and give that a shot. We've already played measure 23 and measure 21. Those are both the same measure rhythmically. There's just a different dynamic element going on between 23 and 21. We have a decrescendo. There is an accent at the beginning of it. I feel like this is the composer's way of expressing the decrescendo that much more. It gives it that much more dynamic contrast to hear flam. So don't feel like you really have to dig in super hard. He's just asking for a little extra on that one note. Let's go ahead and start right there. Set, Molly, 23, go. Yes. And I'm going to go back and play that in just a second with the rhythmical subdivision so that I'm not playing the rolls. We'll play it without rolls. But I just want to take a second to talk about how I'm playing my rolls and how I'm getting the most bang for my buck. Most young percussionists are taught a 2-point fulcrum when they are beginning to play. This is an excellent fulcrum point to play from, and it works for so many different things. Timpani, playing marimba. We have this 2-point fulcrum that really crosses all of the techniques. You know, we can apply it to just about everything that we do. Now, whenever I play my rolls, I actually use a 3-point fulcrum, where I implement a little bit of my middle finger inside of there that helps me kind of produce the energy and help me also take some of the burden off of my thumb and my pointer finger. I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but have you ever played a lot of rolls and you walk away, excuse me, with your thumb and your pointer finger feeling a bit stressed out, like it just had a really strenuous workout, and perhaps the knuckle in your pointer finger feels just really kind of swollen almost, like it did a lot of work. So this is a way for me to spread that burden across different parts of my hand so that, one, I can play more rolls and walk away not in pain, and two, I just think they sound better. So I like to split the thumb and the middle finger and the pointer finger. You'll see right there, instead of it being right there, I move the thumb just a tiny bit back, like a scotch, a baby hair. And this tends to give me a really nice roll quality and gives me the ability to just play on a higher level than what I would if I was just using the 2-point. So let's go back and play 23 through 27 without rolls, just so we can appreciate the rhythmical subdivision, where the releases happen at, what hand we're starting on. We want to be very particular about this and know exactly what we're doing at all times. We want to be in ultimate control. 2, set, Molly, go, Molly. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And again, I'm using the drum head and where I'm playing it at to help me create these dynamics and kind of take the stress off of my hands. It's not all in my hands. I can use the drum and the sounds that it's capable of making to my advantage to help me create those really nice dynamics. So let's move on though. We're almost done with the piece. 2 more lines. We've got measure 28 through 30. It starts out with this really long roll, the longest roll inside the whole piece. If you think anybody's listening to your rolls, they're going to be listening to you on this one measure. This is where they're going to really listen in. Other than that, the rest of the measure is pretty hunky-dory as far as I can see. It almost repeats itself, minus the last 16th partial from 29 to 30. So just make sure you're watching that. They're very similar. We have a decrescendo and then a crescendo on beats 2 and both 29 and 30. So just remember that the accent at the beginning of those decrescendos, don't you don't have to really dig into them that hard. They're just for effect, I find. So, all right, here we go. Set volley without the rolls go. I'll do that again without the rolls. 2, set volley go volley. With the rolls, set volley go volley. Again, set volley go volley. Wonderful. Not too complicated, honestly, in that measure. You just have to have a nice roll. Remember, at this slow tempo 45, that's going to make the roll more difficult to play. The quicker that you go, I find that the Goldilocks zone is between 50 and 55 to play this piece. Once you start passing that 55 zone, you're really going to have to push and use a lot of energy to play this many notes within your roll. So, anyways, last line. Woo! All right, here we go. Measure 31 to the end, the very last line. We have a 4-stroke rough in the very last measure. Quite an interesting way to end the piece. I don't think that this was an accident by any means. They are really trying to test the player and see what sort of dynamic capabilities they have within their hands, as well as just how mature of a player they are. So, let's go ahead and play it a couple of times, and we'll talk about some different approaches. Oh, and I almost forgot, we have this tripletized 16th rhythm and beat 2 on measure 31 and beat 1 measure 32. They're the same exact accent pattern, but because they have an odd number of beats inside of there, we end up playing that same exact rhythm on the opposite hand. Right, right, left, right, left, left, left. Oops. So, let's go ahead and play it in time. Set, volley, go, volley. Two, again, volley, go, volley. So you're going to notice that there's a really quick taper at the end of the tripletized 16th section, what I would call the left-hand side. Beat 1, the third partial of that beat, where there's a little decrescendo that leads right into beat 2. I like to play those notes dispersed amongst probably a 3 to 4 inch span on the snare drum. So left, left, it would be off the right hand, correct? Right, left, right, left. So that I can get the ultimate and decrescendo effect right there. Oops. And then yeah, I keep that piano 4-stroke roll as low as possible. I do play it off the left hand. There are many options when playing 4-stroke rolls. You could play it right, right, left, right. Which might be easier at a faster tempo. I do mine left, right, left, right. Of course, you could do it off the right hand. I'm not as proficient as that one as I would like to be. You could do right, left, left, right. So there are different combinations. You could even do 2 doubles, left, left, right, right. Or right, right, left, left. To me, it just kind of depends on the tempo, and honestly, it might be something that develops over time with me. The faster I'm capable of playing the piece, I might change the sticking on that as I get better at it. So, don't get stuck to one thing if you feel like a different approach is going to help you be able to execute that a little bit better. Something that I would definitely do is take beat 2 of measure 31 and beat 1 of measure 32 and play them continuously in sequence, like a whole bunch. Until you can feel extremely fluent. Whoops, that was a little... That was better. One more time. So yeah, you want this lick to feel second nature to you, and honestly, it's a very useful one. I play that a lot on drum set. Super useful jazz lick. And I know that Dr. Susan Martin Tariq had an influence on this piece, and she is definitely one of the best jazz drum set players out there that I know. So, I'm not surprised to see a lick like that. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to email me or send me some sort of message or communication. But thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope that it helps you, and have a great day.